right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Okay, I just want to make sure where my papers are. Sorry I'm late. Sorry I'm late. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Committee on Ordinance for Tuesday, September 8th, 2015. We are going to begin with a joint public hearing of the Ordinance Committee, which represents the City Council, and the Planning Board, which is an independent committee. There are a number of items that we'll be dealing with as a joint public hearing, but keep in mind that it's not a joint body. We make independent decisions. And so it's really a courtesy to the applicant and to the citizens that they only have to come forward on at one meeting on a particular issue that they're interested in, as opposed to going to a city council meeting and a separate planning board meeting. So I'd just like to make that distinction clear. The members of the Ordinance Committee of the City Council are sitting in front of me. I'm the chair, Rebecca Lisi. And then beginning at my left, we have City Councilor David Bartley representing Ward 3, City Councilor Gordon Alexander representing Ward 7, City Councilor Linda Bacon representing Ward 5, and City Councilor Jennifer Shatanoff representing the city at large. We also have Councilor Joe McGivern at large joining us this evening, as well as members of the planning staff. I will turn the mic over to Ms. Panich, who can introduce the planning board members.
Good evening, and for the planning board we have John Kelly, Christian LaChapelle, Harry Montalvo, Eileen Reagan, and of course me. And at this point I would entertain a motion to reopen the hearing of the planning board to consider zone change petitions with respect to amending our shopping center zones and creating a shopping center zoning for large districts. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Motion to
And-
reopen the Ordinance Committee public hearing on same issue.
The motion has been made and seconded to take up item number 2, that the city create a shopping center zoning district designed for large-scale districts, but not including, not limited to Kmart Plaza, King Street, South Street Plaza, etc. All in favor? Aye. So moved. And so I believe the last time we got together, the planning department and Marcos Marrero in particular presented us with a plan for how we could restructure the shopping center district so that it would be appealing to multiple current users of the various properties at the Ingleside and Mall area, because there seems to be a hodgepodge of zones that are close but differ in slight ways, and we thought that this would be a good opportunity to create a more contiguous and continuous retail zone in the city, so that it would help to make development easier in that area and help developers from outside the city understand and target their developments for something that we've designated as commercial development in the city. I think one of the large questions that came up at the last meeting was what are the trade-offs and what are the benefits to the current property owners? And I believe that we called in a number of property owners from that area to speak to what they see as some of the benefits of creating a contiguous shopping center zone with the different design standards and dimensional features that have been laid out in the revamping of the ordinance. So perhaps we could start with a brief overview from Marcos and then proceed over to hearing public comment from the guests that the planning department invited in to speak on this matter.
Sure. So that was a very good summary. The ordinance intends to adjust the realities of the large commercial properties in the Ingleside area to modern realities and modern economics, and particularly creating a standardized zone so that you don't have a series of properties that are each facing different regulatory environments to do the same type of development. That's just, it's not fair and it's not efficient. Retail has seen changing conditions over the past years, and we'll continue to see that from a landscape where people are shopping more and more online. More efficient inventory delivery means less need for space for inventory, and a need for property owners and property managers to seek new types of tenants to fill space. So this is a proactive way of making sure that our main retail corridor in Ingleside maintains its vibrancy and tenancy into the future. We have other properties that would be complementing its retail, or some of the properties would be complementing its retail with hotels, for example. But there are height restrictions. There are signage restrictions that aren't uniform, and there are restrictions on some retail as to what type of office or medical space would be allowed versus in others there is no restriction. So that just makes very little sense, and this would all make it uniform for all the players in the neighborhood. So that's a quick overview of the ordinance that's been discussed. I think it's been 3 or 4 times now. And one of the takeaways from the last meeting was to invite some of the property owners. We did reach out to property owners of the mall, Pier 1 Plaza, Barnes & Noble Plaza, the former Holyoke Hotel, which is being redeveloped now, and others. By and large, this has received very positive feedback, and we've invited them all. I believe we have a couple of them here today.
Thank you, Mr. Marrero. Do you want to add anything, or should we open public comment? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion then to open the public comment portion
So
of the
moved.
evening. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. So moved. We need a vote from the planning board as well.
Actually, we don't.
You don't?
We have never taken a vote to open public comment.
Okay. So with that, if there's anyone here who would like to speak in favor or against this project, I think we have noted already that there are some vested interests here who'd like to speak. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Andrew Crystal with O'Connell Development, 480 Hampden Street. As Marco said, he reached out to us and gave us a copy of the draft changes to the shopping center district. We are 100% supportive. It makes sense, I think, from a planning perspective as well as for our particular property in the district that will be affected. The industry is changing. Stores are getting smaller and fewer because, as Marco said, online shopping and other avenues of retailers. So the trend we've seen throughout New England and really quite frankly across the country as space becomes vacant in retail centers is more and more mixed use is happening, whether it be medical offices, civic offices, satellite post office stations or substations for police are fairly common, as well as just commercial office space that's more service oriented. A lot of the traits of the retail centers, such as the ones in Ingleside, meet the requirements of a lot of these medical offices as the medical industry is being decentralized. There are more and more clinics popping up, and they look for the same easy highway access for regional outreach, as well as the parking requirements, which are actually less than a retail store of a similar size would require. The only thing I would ask the board and the ordinance committee to consider in the ordinance is the restriction on the percentage of space that's being proposed to be allowed to be non-retail. I think it's being now proposed at 10%. I think that's low based on the amount of vacancy that's coming up, on the types of uses that we would see coming in. And really, if there were up to, say, 30% of space that was non-retail, the character of a center would still remain retail. A lot of what we're seeing in trends in the industry is the millennial generation, which really likes village centers and lifestyle centers and mixed-use centers where they can do shopping, eating, as well as other errands that would be satisfied by allowing more medical and office space within those centers. So we think it's a great improvement. It certainly simplifies things for us and other developers coming into that area, knowing what's expected, what's allowed right up front. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Thank you. Bill Rogalski, 71 Apricot Hill Lane, West Springfield, Mass. Here representing Pyramid Management Group. Not much more I can say other than what Andrew already said. Certainly we're very pleased with the planning department to let us be involved as in part of this process. But the key term that Andrew used is going forward is mixed use. You lose a box, there's nobody there to backfill it. So all of a sudden now we're breaking up boxes, whether it's services, whether it's restaurants, entertainment, the retail landscape, and we still call it retail because essentially at the end of the day, that's what it is changing. And I think this allows us flexibility. It allows us a forum to go back and not to piecemeal it and have to, we have to do one thing for this parcel, but we have to do something else for this parcel, and it streamlines the process. So I think, all in all, we've looked at it. We've got it in for an internal legal review, so I haven't gotten that back from our attorneys yet. But I mean, the initial feedback was very positive, and I think the time is right to do it, especially if you want to stay competitive, as a city, to stay competitive in this marketplace. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak tonight on this item?
I'd like to speak in favor. My name is James Lavelle. I live at 244 Lower Westfield Road in Holyoke, and I think it's a fine job that Marcos has done, but I would like to have, if it's possible, and I know that we're talking about mixed use there for retail and others, is if that land that we're talking about mostly out in Ingleside, there's, for years and years, I've been there for 30 years now, there's a big water problem out there with streams that go this way and that way and under this and over that. I would hope that the planning board or the Conservation Commission could look at some of the overlay plans that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has for the use of, streams and waterways that crisscross through those properties over there. It's making it a very limited use. There's a lot of acreage there. If you could, I like to impose what I call the Disney theory. Disney was built in a swamp, and it's still being expanded in a swamp. And when they say you can't build here because there's water there, well, why did Walt Disney figure out how to do it and did a pretty good job of it? Why can't we in Massachusetts do the same? Thank you. I am for the change. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll ask again if there's anyone else who would like to speak in favor or against the proposal this evening. Hearing none, I'd like to see if there's questions from either the Ordinance Committee or the Planning Board. Councilor Bacon.
For the business folks that are here that have had a chance to look over this zoning proposal, and I just wish to share with you the concerns that I have from it from a matter of law and zoning, given that I've been involved in many of these in my short stay on the city council. And that is that we're in a situation now where we have one parcel that is zoned this same zoning. I'm not against creating zoning districts, and I'm not against changing the zones that we have. And over the years that I've been on the council, people have come in under whatever their zoning is, and there have been changes made to accommodate within the zone. So what's leaving me puzzled about this is, if we have issues of height, type, and size, why can't we just amend the current zones, which people are saying are pretty similar anyway? So that's part of what I'm caught up in here. The other thing is, we have what I have come to understand, although the spot zoning definition seems to be a bit of a moving target recently, if we have one property with one zone, I have had many conversations by people who know more than I do on the topic, saying that that is the definition of spot zoning. whatever we're creating here, if we want to make it something new and different, then I think we should name it something new and different. Because when I see something come through requesting a text change in a zone, and then the next thing I see coming through is a brand-new zone, it just raises questions in my mind. Because all the other projects that have come forth to us have worked within the zoning that they have. So the question that I'm left with for the business people that are here is, given the zoning that you have, and given the zone changes that you see in this shopping center proposal, is there enough compelling within this new zone that people who are zoned BH, BG, IG are gonna come in and say, I don't wanna be this zone anymore, I now wanna be a shopping center zone? Or would you more likely come in, keep the zone you have, which from my reading is generally more broad, allows you to do more if you are in those zones, and try to work with the zone you have. So that's my question for the business people that are here. Would you, if this is passed, actually come in and seek to change your current zoning to SC based on your reading of this draft? I would just be really interested to know. Thank you.
Do either of the business owners who spoke want to address that question?
As far as my read of it, it looked like everything that was allowed in all of the various business zones is allowed in this zone. So as far as I can see, other than the restrictions on office and retail, it doesn't limit any of the properties. So we certainly would come in and be supportive of having the zoning change for the district our property's in.
That wasn't my question.
Go ahead, restate your question then.
My question was, given the current properties that you own, if this zone change goes through, are you going to come in and seek to change the current zoning of your other properties to this zone? He said he was in favor of the zoning change, but what I'm seeking the answer to is, would you change your current properties to this zone if it was passed from what they are now?
If I'm understanding, the area where this is being proposed, if it's changed to the text or something similar to what's been proposed to you, yes, we would come in and request to be changed to that new language, that new zoning district.
Well, from my reading, this is not, it's been spoken of as an area limited zone change, but South Street Plaza is included in here. So I'm not understanding that this is proposed as a neighborhood zone change. I'm understanding it's being proposed as a city-wide zone change. Thank you.
So I just want to follow up on that point, Councilor Bacon. So it's a zone change, and it relates to the text that governs the zone. So if we create a shopping center district, currently we have a shopping center district that's fairly narrow. It's on the Barnes & Noble Plaza alone. And so technically, if we change the language, we're really changing only that one parcel in the city until other property owners request a zone change. And I do think that the city can play a role in facilitating the zone change. And I think at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is create something that is attractive, so that, for example, Mr. Rogowski, who's at the mall in a BH zone currently, sees some incentives, whether it's the signage or the height requirements, or even the mixed use in particular, that allows for flexibility moving forward that is not presently available in the BH zone. And I think Marcos wants to speak, but I do want to recognize Councilor Bacon before.
Thank you. I'm not really here to debate the chair, but to my knowledge, we do not have a retail zone in the Ingleside area in the city. We have a number of zones in an area that has a lot of retail. This is true for other parts of the city as well. So if we are interested in creating a retail zone at Ingleside that we then want to call shopping center zone for the owner of the shopping center that wants the text change, let's call it what it is. If we are in actuality creating a zone change for the city then let's call it that. It sounds to me like what we're more talking about is sort of what was done on Northampton Street relative to mixed use, only we're talking about Ingleside for shopping center. Would that be accurate, Marcos?
No, it would not be. What we're trying to do is make a text change on an existing zone so that then we can rezone the properties around Ingleside. So it's a two-step process, and just for clarification, the city doesn't have to wait for property owners to apply for it. Certainly, it would be much easier and the good practice to have buy-in from the property owner, but this is one step in a two-step process that gets executed at the same time. It is changing the text of what defines a shopping center, and at the same time approving the change of the properties towards the SC. Any city councilor can file that order. That doesn't have to come from the property owner. So it's not an overlay district like Northampton Street.
Well, I didn't mean from the point of view of what type of a district it is, but from the point of view of the creation of a district that is treated in one way where other areas will not be treated that way. I was not under the impression that this was only about the Barnes and Noble
It is not.
shopping center. I mean, I know that's how it started out, but that is, in fact, if this was passed, the only plaza that will be affected by this zone change at this time, correct?
If the council acted on nothing else, it would only be towards Barnes and Noble Plaza, but as we've discussed here at length, that's not the intent of what we're doing here, and what I've told the council is, if that's a concern, then you can hold on to actually voting on anything until another order is filed, making changes to the actual zones of every other property. The intent is to have all the properties rezoned into this new SC.
Right, but if we look back in history, when that original zone was created, before my time, when that shopping center zone was created, the hope was that when that zone was created, the other property owners would be lining up and embracing that zone for many of the same reasons that we're sitting here talking about now. But creating that, if you will, did not cause the people to come. The people went for the zones that gave them the greater degree of flexibility at the time. I guess it's what is not clear to me is what the value of it will be in terms of the results. I understand the concept, and it's not that I'm not understanding what you're saying. I'm not seeing the value of the proposal for the city.
Well, the value of the proposal would be someone who can't do a hotel higher than 4 stories can now do it. So that's higher value, that's more jobs. It means that right now a property that's constrained as to how high it can go, like the mall, or the signage that they can provide, or the types of uses that they can use to fill the space, they now have that use available to them so that they can make sure that the space is filled. They don't get into a significant amount of vacancies, and they don't go into a death spiral like, frankly, the downtown has gone through many, many decades ago, where you start losing tenants, and at some point it becomes less valuable to be there. So, this provides them with the flexibility, as Bill Rogalski has just said, to maintain their tenancy high, the value of the property up, and that is the biggest taxpayer in the city. So that's a golden egg right there. It provides the tax revenue, it provides an enormous amount of jobs, and it also provides for new types of development. Whether the SC was successful when it was passed, I don't know, in the 70s, in the 80s, I don't know, I can't speak to it, but also just because that failed doesn't mean that this isn't a good attempt. The only thing that it really maintains is the letters S and C, because it's shopping center. Because really, that's what the district has become. But this is not an attempt to recreate what the SC was trying to do, which was create one unique zone for all types of shopping centers throughout the city at different scales. This is very specifically to provide for the large shopping center district that is Pier 1 Plaza, Barnes & Noble Plaza, the former Holyoke Hotel, the mall. Those are very large retail attractors off of Highway 91. And so we have to make sure, with all the benefits that it provides in terms of jobs and taxes to the city, that we stay ahead of the game. And that's what we're trying to do.
I still don't see the difference between those plazas and South Street Plaza.
Well, there's a significant difference between those plazas and South Street Plaza. South Street Plaza was built at a time where the main corridor, north-south, was Route 5. So all the traffic and therefore the clientele that you could capture was right there. The reason why you have vacancy in South Street Plaza isn't necessarily because they don't have flexibility to have different uses. I doubt very much that there would be a proposal for a high-rise hotel at that point, because it's not visible. It's off the beaten track. Whereas off of exit 15, you have access to a lot of clientele. So the limiting factor for South Street Plaza is visibility. It was built at a point in time where it's no longer getting the flow of people into it. So there's a significant difference there. Other plazas aren't as big. They're not a destination, as is the mall. The Holyoke Mall is the regional indoor mall. And with that attraction, you have the attraction to other plazas that have set up around it precisely because it has a lot of traffic flow from exit 15. So there's a significant difference.
I don't want to monopolize the mic, but I would just say it would seem to me that any plaza could benefit from flexibility if that's the main selling point of this zone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Alexander and then Councilor Shattunoff are in queue.
Thanks. Continuing under suspension, I can ask Marcos a few questions.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks. Marcos, hey. So it sounds like we're getting a little bit tangled up on are we tweaking the existing zone that happens to apply to the Barnes & Noble Plaza, or are we trying to create something that is in essence new? So if we called it Zone SP, Shopping Plaza, instead of Shopping Center, it would be a new zone. Then the Barnes & Noble Plaza would be free to apply for a zone change from SC to SP, correct? Or the city could decide they want to rezone from SC to SP.
Correct.
And that would also apply to any other parcel in the area. It would be going from its existing zone to this new zone that was created independently of any existing property.
Correct.
So that might be an option that solves that circular debate that seems to be going on. I would note that one of the two orders that we're trying to address in terms of agenda and sort of what started this conversation specifically does call out South Street. I think you may have actually been referring to the Kmart Plaza in your discussion of Route 5
I'm sorry,
traffic.
yes, you're completely right. I did confuse
fine.
those. Yes.
Which no longer, Route 5 is no longer the main corridor. But Kmart, South Street, some of these other, over, I'm picking a number, I don't know how big that is, but over 25 acres of blacktop, that at some point you say, okay, this is large scale, this should be governed under some kind of shopping plaza, I'll stay away from SC zoning. And maybe when the dust settles on the proposal for a zone that makes sense up in the Ingleside corridor, maybe the Kmart Plaza isn't best served by that same zone. And maybe we need to look at something different for Kmart, for South Street, for, I don't know which other ones might be considered in the city. But I would suggest that because we keep getting into this discussion of, are we talking about rezoning the Barnes & Noble Plaza for the purpose of adding a couple of uses, that maybe we should just rename this new zone so there is no property in the city under that zone right now? Don't change the proposal at all. Just change all the SCs to SPs or something else so that we could say, it's a clean zone, it's a fresh zone. If you want to be in, apply for a change. That's all. Thank you.
And Councilor Shattunoff.
Thank you. And my question is going to kind of piggyback that. We're talking about the mall, we're talking about up there, but Kmart Plaza could come in and ask for this zone change, correct? And I
anyone
know
can
it's
ask
not
for a zone
the most popular road in Holyoke and blah, blah, but they could. This isn't stopping anyone who has enough land to ask for this zone change. So it's not just for the mall, it's not just for Barnes & Noble. So I think that's where, I'm not going to speak for anybody, that's where people could get tied up. We're just catering to Ingleside. But other properties could apply for this zone.
That's correct. Any property owner can apply for any zone that's on the books. It would be up to the council to decide who merits it based on where it is and what functions the public wants there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Kelly.
Please, don't call me counselor. I get enough trouble. Just one minor thing. I recall the last time we met, I suggested, because of the fact we've got a couple of motels being built, Whiting Farm Road project, and maybe interested in a third hotel out in that area, that we also allow car rental by way of special permit. Because a lot of times people staying at these hotels or motels want to rent a car, and I don't see that in any of the drafts yet. So I just propose that as something that we may want to consider adding as an additional use to this particular district.
Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Councilor Leese. I'd just like to go on record and thank the planning director for telling me, as the original maker of the shopping center zone sponsor, that it failed. And I appreciate that greatly. We heard from two important people this evening. Vice President from O'Connell Development, the general manager of the mall, one of the finest malls in Western Mass, and one of the greatest developers right out of Holyoke in most of New England. And the Holyoke Mall goes far beyond Western Mass for what it attracts to. And they're telling us it's changing. Our job tonight is not about guessing and second guessing what's going to happen, but creating opportunity to go along with the change and to bring the type of business that we need in Holyoke, to be able to think about building up instead of building out when it comes to retail, to think about mixed use, which is what we're doing downtown, and to create the concept of mixed use across the city so that we can do it within reason, do it carefully, but do it as a plan for the entire city. This is probably, what we're doing this evening is probably one of the reasons that the shopping center never really took off. We didn't create it for, and it's not Barnes & Noble, it's Holyoke Crossing. We created it because we did want to put as many large shopping center districts into one zone, get away from IG, get away from Business Highway, and make sense out of it, because when you look at some of the zones that the shopping centers are in, there's a lot more that can happen that is not what the neighborhood needs. This makes sense. We're putting the eggs for what we call retail into one basket, but opening it up so we can attract new business, hotels, restaurants, non-uses that will be compatible, but at the same time, not necessarily allowed. And I think the biggest, restriction here is to finally address the height restriction and realize that we have to start building up. We have to start thinking about that, or we're not going to make it as a community. Two very important people spoke. The planning department has put a good proposal in front of us. I'd just like to speak in favor of it.
Thank you. Councilor Alexander.
Thanks. Quick question, Jeff. What zones can you put a car rental in now? Car rental agency, I guess. is the right term?
It's wherever auto sales would be allowed.
It's BH alone.
Gotcha. So we could carve that out as a separate use.
Car rentals only in BH?
I'm pretty sure that's what.
No,
we've-
it falls under auto sales, I believe. 1 second, please.
Sure, this came up at several other meetings.
As classified in the use chart, it says motor vehicle, trailer, boat sales, and rental is allowed by a special permit in BH, BE, and IG.
So from a planning perspective, I'm just ricocheting off John's question. From a planning perspective, is there any reason not to create a separate use in the table of uses so that it doesn't get tangled up into boat sales?
We certainly could, right.
And from a planning perspective, is there any reason not to include that in this proposed shopping area zone?
Nothing that I can think of, unless you just
Makes
have it be,
reasonable
unless
sense.
you still have it just done by a special permit in the SC zone as well. It's just an issue of adding in a CC to the use chart.
But that would open it up for more than just
Oh, that's true.
car rental
Right, so
agencies.
just singling out that specific use, correct, yeah. We'd have to add a separate line.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions then? The last thing I'd like to point out is that the issue before us is this shopping plaza, shopping center district that's looking to expand some of the uses to make a more even playing field across mixed use and commercial retail in the Ingleside area. The other side of the coin that's been filed, which we see further down the agenda, is to begin to then limit some of the parameters on the business general, business highway, and IG districts, so that we really are carving out distinct uses for these different zones so that we get, again, more contiguous and continuous zoning, something that's more predictable and easy to identify for developers. And then also where we're going to see some of these other, districts, making sure that they have, again, the design features and dimensional features for zones that may be abutting neighborhoods more frequently than what we would see in the Ingleside area specifically. Any other comments, public comment? Councilor Bacon. Can you speak into the microphone?
Can we get input from legal? I would like to ask a question.
Sure.
Of council.
So I'd like to entertain then a motion to suspend the necessary rules and allow legal to approach.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved.
So Kara, the question just came up, or in the discussion, it came up that perhaps there might be certain uses under some of the existing zones that might be removed and other things added to this zone that we're having the hearing on. So if that did happen, if we made complementary or collaborative changes to the other zones, for folks that are already zoned under, say, BG, BH, and IG, would any changes made at a date certain cause the use of people currently zoned under the current zoning laws? Would those be moot then? And so anybody under these other zones would be bound to the changes made?
They would be. I mean, if you took a use out of one, I mean, say you take, I'm just going to make this up, if you take a restaurant out of BL and a restaurant is no longer allowed in a BL zone, any restaurants are now pre-existing non-conforming uses, so they can continue to operate and enjoy that protection for as long as they do operate. But then there's a whole, another area of law of if though they cease to operate, and obviously no new restaurant could then come into that zone under that scenario.
Well, I would just say, if that's the path we're going down, we better be really, really careful, because when we're crafting zoning laws and making changes, I don't think we're supposed to be about picking winners and losers. I think we are supposed to be about creating flexibility, creating opportunity. But I would just say, if we're going to start taking things out of a zone that's more flexible, then I think we're going down a different path than simply creating a new zone and setting up more opportunity. So I just think we need to be very careful on that path. Thank you. Thank you, Kara.
And I just want to state again, what I heard Kara say was that existing businesses would not be made to conform with any changes until they cease to own or operate that business. So if we did begin to restrict certain zones, the current business owners in those newly restricted zones would not be affected until they wanted to sell their property or business to a new owner. So are there any other comments that you'd like to make? Councilor Alexander.
Still under suspension. Kara, could you just clarify that one point? An existing business that is a functioning business, that became pre-existing non-conforming because of a zone change, could sell as long as the business is still operating. They can sell to a new owner. This is not special permit that expires with transfer of ownership. So as long as that business is operating, it has to go fallow for what? Multiple years.
It's 2 years.
2 years.
Right, it's the use.
Of the use having ceased,
Correct.
not because of a change of ownership.
Correct.
Okay, so as long as a business is running, the business continue to run.
Right, it's the use, not the ownership.
Okay,
or
thank you.
anything
So
like that.
really, if we were to, and I realize this is a separate discussion and we're going to address this separately under different orders on the agenda, but if we were to start considering eliminating certain uses from certain zones, it'd be really about what do we want that zone to look like in terms of its long-term evolution into the future to be more appropriate for the surrounding zones and the surrounding uses. Thank you.
So then, is there a motion to continue this public hearing to a date certain?
Is there a reason to continue this public hearing?
I am concerned simply because Mr. Rogowski has, sure. Mr. Rogowski has not received information from his legal department,
Okay.
which he's
Good
asked
point.
for.
Thank you.
And did you have a question that you wanted to address? You need to come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Mary Hurley. I live at 72 Lower Westfield Road in Holyoke. I guess I'm confused. I wasn't sure if the petition, Mr. Croto, if I should speak now or if that was something that was be continued to address later.
It's a separate public hearing, which we'll be taking up next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we need a date.
We need a date, and I guess we can look to the first Tuesday in October as a potential date.
Can you ask Bill if he's gonna?
First Tuesday is city council.
Mr. Rogowski, there's been a question raised as to whether or not you think you'd have your formal legal opinion on the text changes by the 13th of October.
I will certainly push for that. If I might make one additional comment, and again, I'm not committing to whether we would seek that zone change. Some of the things that we were granted in 1995 when we made the expansion at the mall, we didn't realize after the fact. We assumed that we were grandfathered in on certain things. As we moved forward, we found out that we weren't, due to certain changes in the zoning code. So it becomes at that point for us, and I'm sure Andrew would agree with me, to lease to a tenant nowadays doesn't take much to kill a deal. You know, and if you trip up in the short grass because maybe, and we've changed that, but we can't manage the issues one at a time. We changed the signage ordinance. So that was great. We almost lost a tenant over that. Yeah, it makes a difference to one particular tenant whether, if they can get a certain size signage somewhere else with what they would consider equal visibility, they'll go. It doesn't take much to queer a deal. So I would hope you keep that in mind, that the ultra competitiveness of the marketplace. But yes, I kind of danced around the question. But yeah, I mean, we'll certainly shoot for, what was the date? October 13th?
October 13th is what we're looking at.
Sure. I'll push for a response.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So motion to continue the public hearing of the Ordinance Committee till October 13th at 6:30?
Is there a second? Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
And motion to continue the public hearing of the planning board till October 13th at 6:30.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
So Councilor Alexander just raised a question, because we didn't suspend the necessary rules to take up 2 and 3 as a package, but we did speak of them. It probably makes sense to, for the record, take up item number 3 and then motion to continue it to the 13th so that they remain as a package.
Motion to take up item number 3.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Motion to open the public hearing on item number 3.
Motion made and seconded. So all in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Motion to continue the public hearing on item number 3 till 10:13 at 6:30.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. So items number 2 and 3 related to shopping center districts are both continued until the 13th at 6:30, October 13th. Okay. Thanks everyone for coming in on that item. We're going to move forward in our agenda.
Motion to take up item number 4.
Motion has been made and seconded to take up item number 4. Is there something else? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Oh, I think that Ms. Regan is saying that you made an analogous opening of only item number 2 as opposed to 2 and 3, the same as what we did. So, you're okay? Yeah. Okay. So the next item on our agenda, there's been a motion made and seconded to take up item number 4, petition of Dennis Croteau of 7983 Lower Westfield Road and changing the zone from BL to BG or IG. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Motion to open the public hearing on item number 4.
Motion has been made and seconded to open the public hearing on item number 4. All in favor? Aye. So moved. Thank you.
Okay. Motion to open the public hearing on zone change petition from BL to BG and/or IG for 79 and 83 Lower Westfield Road. Dennis Croteau, petitioner.
So moved.
You have to worry about it. All in favor?
Aye.
So is the petitioner here?
Yes.
Great. So Mr. Croteau, state your name and address for the record, and then you can give us an overview of why you're seeking the zone change.
Okay. My name is Dennis Croteau. I live at 32 Concord Avenue in Holyoke. I own 2 parcels of land on 79 and 83 Lower Westfield Road. The 79 parcel was formerly the Ingleside Gift House for 25 years. And we had a great run over there, but as all of you know, retail can be tough, and our tax base went up dramatically maybe about 6 years ago. It went up $5,000 in 1 year, so in 3 years we paid $48,000 in property tax. We finally, we appealed it, but we got shot down, and finally, I was really tied up with my mom's care at the time. She was at my house for 5 years, and after my mom passed away, I went to the assessor's office, and they did finally lower the taxes by $5,000, but it was kind of after the fact, and business was tough over there. The last 3 or 4 years, we kept losing money, so, which was sad because we had probably 5 or 6 employees from Holyoke that were there long-term. They were, you know, one of them was my cousin Franny Wilhelmy that was at the Holyoke Creative Art forever. And we missed the store, we missed the customers, you know. But, so moving down the line here, it's been very difficult for me to maintain the properties, having the store be vacant. And I have a tenant next door that's very nice at a lower rent. And I'm here to propose to get a zone change on the property, which is the residential property next to the store, with the proposition of putting in a really high-end hotel there. My cousin can speak to you about those particulars because he's been working with the people that made the offer on the property several months ago. We talked to both the son and the dad. They've already done an analysis of the property, and they feel it's an excellent location, and they could certainly work with the area to make it attractive. My desire, because I've lived in Holyoke, is the same thing I did at McClellan's. I've owned McClellan's Flower Shop, particularly for 47 years. It's in a residential area. We have one of the nicest properties in the area, and we maintain it beautifully. We have wonderful neighbors. Some of them work for us, and you know, it's just a nice relationship. I don't want some business going in there that's going to be detrimental to the area, because I think it's a great area, and that's our goal down the road. Certainly for the city, because I live here, and especially for people that are abutting the property, rather than having the property run into ruin because of maintenance and so forth. It would certainly benefit the city in terms of the look of the property, and lastly, the revenue, which we all need to survive on. So my cousin John Radner will tell you some particulars about the offer we had and what they had in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Radner in Forest Ridge Lane in Agawam. We put the property for sale originally through a high-end real estate company. didn't get any results, so I offered the dentist to try to do a little help. I own some real estate in Springfield, I own a strip mall, and a few other things already in Springfield area. And so we put the property for sale, and we got some nibbles, and that little lot that's zoned business would be chased after by the likes of Burger King and people like that, showed some interest in that type of thing. That's got a lot of undesirable type features for sure, and we went on to do that.
Mr. Radner?
Yeah.
Just because the acoustics in here are terrible, we ask that you speak more clearly into the microphone.
That's the problem. There's awful loud. I don't know if you can...
There is.
Okay. Let's try this. So we had some generic people show up, and everything's a little small, burger joints, stuff like that. And we want to develop the property as a whole, the two lots side by side. I have some pictures with me if somebody not clear that hasn't shopped at the Ingleside Christmas Shop for real. If I might pass the photos around a little bit, maybe help clear it up a little bit. So you got the main store that's been there, and it's a getting dilapidated house as the main store, which has got the somewhat proper business zoning. And the house next to it on the left-hand side is a brick ranch, which is being rented as we speak. In the back of us, we've got at least 8 or 9 stories for the condominium project behind us, or the high-end ones behind us. And we've got, according to the prospective buyer, they did an analysis. There's enough setback from the street, back from the property line and the sides, so there's no problem putting the desired 4-story, what he'd like to put in there. That's all, just 4, not 6, not 8, just 4 stories, small boutique hotel. And his starting range per night is $172. High-end business, college people going in, not the kids, but the parents going to visit the kids in the colleges and the high-end business trade. He promises that in writing to you. He didn't. What we're trying to do here is Dennis has got a limited budget. He's got a lot of problems with the taxes and so forth. I try to help him out. So Amish would love to be here. We said we'd try to get some feel for the neighborhood, and then lo and behold, you get this new zoning change. Possibly it might help us indirectly, or not sure about that too. You're talking about. So that something else that confused the issue tonight. But anyway, so it's a high-end boutique. Small pool inside, conference center for businesses, and it's not going to be a outside type picnic areas or playgrounds or anything like that. None of that stuff. Strictly tied internally, and so we said that we would try to see what the climate was in town for a zone change possibility before he came in with his crew, and the architect's got some generic drawings already done. I said we'll come in first and see what the sentiment is, and lo and behold, there's a possibility of a zone change for the territory, which includes some more of these features that we would need to have to get the zone changed on our behalf of our potential buyer. And he's got quite a repertoire there, and he says, it's 50 to 100 plus thousand to get his zone change done for the ones he's involved with. And we'd like to have that money come to us or to my cousin for retirement purposes, be honest, up front, rather than to give it to a outsider to stand here and get something started. So we wanted to get some initiative started. If there's some hope, then we'll hire. I think people like Toby, I think it is one of the gentlemen that we met before, one of the lawyers. He would represent us in Amish and so forth, or every recommendation that way, and he would go forward with his drawings, plans, and so forth. But I talked to Hoyok Light and Power. Is it Jason down there? He said, very unique situation. Everything is there. The electrolyte, natural gas, sewers, roads already there. Nothing has to be adjusted in the street area to accommodate a project like this. And there's woods on the left-hand side. We're going to talk about the swamp there, or the brook, or whatever it is, it's bone dry. That won't get encroached. There's plenty of property behind our lot where the parking lot from the people behind us is there. It's not part of their playground area. It's a parking lot that butts our property in the back. And then the house to the side of us is vacant as we speak, as for sale. So there's nobody there right now. I'm not sure who's the owner there tonight here or not, but that property's for sale. It's vacant. And across the street, it's woods. We got one major house across the street and the curb cuts are already, they told me that too, the curb cuts are already there. So there's no aggravation going through and asking for a curb cut change either. Make a loop coming in and coming out. The 2 curb cuts are already there, and which is a nice feature according to the city already too. So less aggravation that way. So the property's pretty level, pretty flat. Wouldn't require much work for elevation change. So there's no massive bulldozer work or digging or anything like that. Utilities are there, and we're close proximity right out to the intersection to get to 91, where the majority of traffic would be coming from. It wouldn't be coming up the hillside from down on Riverdale Road. If it's business traffic, etc., it'll be coming in from the 91. And they love the idea of a mall there because the people that, I should ask them again, they had liked that idea, the people that go to the mall to service the mall, tenants, etc., for service calls and meetings would love to have a spot that close to the mall. They can walk to it from there. So the mall people were happy with that idea, as well as my cousin's potential buyer for the property. Loved that idea. Get a ready-made customer there for X number of rooms a night associated with the mall. So corresponds with what you're talking about, upgrading the zoning in the area to make it a little bit easier, and that's why I'm here with my cousin to start something to see if there's any viable hope of possibility of getting some zone changes to help us out to get a development started there. I'll drop a number, whether you believe it or not, but our potential buyer says it's $140,000 per room to put that together. $140,000 per room. So I talked to your assessor, and obviously he had a little smile on his face when I gave him that kind of number, and the number of rooms involved on 4 stories, plus the building itself. He had a nice smile on his face. So this is not a $1 or $2 million operation. This is pretty good size, to say the least. Nice development situation, and it won't be down into a category of a $30 a night for a family of 4 at $172 a night. That's not the clientele he's shooting for, and doesn't want that clientele there. He has 1 or 2 other locations that cater to that. This would not be that. So in the listing there, he has 1 or 2 that they do take the welfare people, and that nothing for this place like that. This is all the other ones he's got are the high-end locations. And the number of people employed would probably end up being, I would imagine, 25 to 40 people employed there throughout the day, besides the linen service, food service, etc., going through there too. And a little bit about traffic. Not that many rooms, so they leave in the morning or whatever and come back at night, and there's relative to the amount of traffic there, there's almost no pressure on traffic. It's already there. So very few problems to create for traffic jams or anything like that. It's plenty of parking there for what he needs to have for a building lot, plenty of parking there as we speak, and there's plenty of woods around there to buffer from the people behind us also, or the neighbors for the most part. So it looks kind of clean situation there to do without creating a stir in the neighborhood or creating another mess. It doesn't require road improvements or anything like that at all also. So.
Can I ask a few questions?
I hope so.
I still need you at the mic. So the current zone of 79 Lower Westfield Road is business limited, BL. And what is the current zone of
residential? That's the problem on the little brick house is plain residential.
Yeah.
It's on the petition, original petition, that if you got a copy of it. I don't do this full time, so I've got it memorized, but I think it's residential 1 or something like it. It's on the original petition. It's listed there.
Is it R1A?
I can give it for you if you want. Hang on.
It's R1A? Okay.
Both are 1A?
It's fine. I see it now. I see it on the map. So it's currently R1A. And is the intent that the 2 parcels are going to remain separate parcels that you're going to do one development on, or is one side going to receive the development and the other side is going to remain?
We need both parcels. One would be where the hotel would stand now, where the so-called retail store is now physically laid out, that would probably be the hotel base, and the left-hand side would be the parking lot base on the left.
So
going
I just,
sloping down.
I would have a question for legal then, as to whether or not, if you have two parcels that are zoned business, whatever you're seeking, business general or industrial general.
Originally, when I went, and by the way, I forgot to...
I need to finish my question.
Okay.
So I'm just wondering if the setback requirements are different. I mean, maybe it's a question for planning, actually, so we don't have to suspend the rules. So my understanding of what we've seen before us previously is that if you want to build one giant thing across two lots, it needs to be, those two lots need to be married into one single lot to receive the setback requirements that you would be envisioning for this large-scale project. Does that come first? Is it a chicken and egg situation? Do they need to apply for a merging of these properties before they can apply for the zone change? Or what is the procedure that we should be looking at?
Well, I would think that you'd have to apply for an A&R plan to join both lots into one to avoid any setback issues.
An
But
A&R?
that approval not required plan. But I'm not quite sure if there's anything with the common lot law that will, or if there is such a thing, if there would be anything that would prohibit them from not doing that. I guess the only fear would be that in the event that one property were to be taken or sold, that you'd be losing half of, or part of the facility. I mean, there's been recent projects we've had where we have advised the applicant to join the lots into, one holistic lot.
And does that require a separate public hearing
It
process?
is not a public hearing, it's just a matter of submitting the plan, and presumably that plan will meet the three criteria, that it's on a way, has frontage, and that it is on a city-accepted way, street, right away.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I have both Ms. Reagan and Mr. Kelly want to make some points here. And I'm sure that yours are the same.
We may have the same question, but, and this may need a legal clarification, but what I'm reading here, we have a zone change petition, BL to BG and/or IG for 79 and 83 Lower Westfield Road. It's almost like change it to this or whatever else you want it to change to. I mean, I don't think this particular petition is even in order. How can it legally conform? It's asked us to change it to either BG or IG. I mean, it's either or. I think the petitioner has to give us a specific zone that they want, number one. Secondly, if one of these parcels is an R1A, are they requesting a zone change for that too? Because I don't see that anywhere. So I'm very confused by the way this order has been presented to us, number one. And I mean, I need clarification.
Yeah, you're right.
It's almost like saying, change it to whatever you have to do so we can put our hotel there. And zone changes are not for a project or one specific development. It could be any of these uses within any of these zone changes, as we all know in the future. So let's not get hung up yet on what's going to be built there. I want to back up a minute and go slowly and say, specifically, what's the present zone and what do you want to change it to? And that's what we should focus on. And I'm very, very confused by the way this is reading.
So when I went to the city hall, one of the offices here, I showed them what I mentioned what I like to do, and the words came out. There's hard to get, impossible, a special permit to change that one zoning, which requires maximum of 2 stories. Could ask for a special dispensation to make it allowable for 4-story, or go for the other business zoning, which allows for 4. So that's what I was told to put on paperwork, and that's all I did. So and this is, again, I'm just here kind of like...
I guess I just like I guess the question is we're being asked to consider a zone change from one zone to one or another specific zone. Right. And I'm just wondering from a legal perspective, is that correct? Or should we always be looking from one zone to one zone?
So I can say that Kara gave me the go-ahead on advertising this petition as it was written, because the clock begins ticking once the petition is submitted. And it seemed that we could advertise for both, but at some point we need to narrow it down to one or the other so that we're really clear. I think that's all I have to offer at this point.
But I would like to just pick up, before I go back to Ms. Reagan, whose hand I do see, on a point that Mr. Kelly made that I think is worth emphasizing here, and that is that we do zone for use. We do not zone for the project. And, you know, all of this talk about what your proposed buyer would like to do is, of course, interesting and can be very exciting, but it's not relevant here. You know, what we need to focus on is whether moving to a hotel-type use and the other uses that would be involved in or allowed under your proposed zones is appropriate for these couple of parcels. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Reagan.
Yeah, this is a question for Jeff. Just clarify my brain. When we do an A&R and the two parcels are zoned differently, do we automatically go to the more restrictive or the less restrictive, or?
Well, I think I can't really think of anything in the past where we ever joined two lots that had different zones, for what it's worth.
Okay, so that's a question, like what zone does it become if we join the two properties?
Well, I mean, I know that there was a zoning, there is a zoning provision in there. I think it would probably go to the more restrictive, to be honest. I know that there are some parcels out there that are currently split zones just because of how they were drawn on the map, and they're historic parcels at this point. But I mean, we've never joined lots that were at the different zones.
Okay.
Well, there are provisions that might apply here. But
Do you want to speak, Ms. Panich?
I think there may be some provisions in our split zone rules that allow for the sloshing of one use onto a specific number of feet of the border of the other use. But given that we don't normally zone or do A&Rs on lots from different zoning, I'm not sure that would even be applicable. I think this is one that we're going to have to go back and do some research on.
So I have a queue here for the City Council, Councilor Alexander, and then Bacon wish to speak.
Thanks. Jeff, couple of things. Good. One is, I'm remembering we addressed a similar issue with a property up on Upper Northampton Street where there's that series of little cabin buildings that make up the zone boundary cuts through the property there. So it's not a question of an A&R, but there is a situation where we have a single property under two zones. We did address the setback requirements so that the setbacks are from the zone boundary, not from the property line.
Correct.
So that's how we address that.
Right.
It seems to me in this particular case, the sequence we'd probably want to follow, though, is assuming that we move forward, rezone both properties individually.
Properties first and then do the A&R.
Then do the A&R, so you're combining two properties of like zone. Third point, is there any reason, and maybe this is a question for Kara, so the application before us is to change to either, whatever they are, IG or BG? Based on earlier discussions this evening, we may have a different zone that would be most applicable. Can we amend this on the fly so that we would rezone to that zone if that made sense for both the applicant and the council and planning and everybody? If everybody agreed to that, could we make that change, or does that require re-advertising and restarting over? Re-advertising and restarting over. Okay. So
can you just repeat what you said, since we didn't have a microphone out there for Kara?
So, I'm sorry, I asked Kara, because we had a discussion about whether to create a shopping plaza zone that might include hotel-like uses, and if the applicant and the council and planning all felt that was the best path to take, would we need to re-advertise as a unique and distinct zone change for these two properties? And the legal advice we got was, yes, that would require new public notice because we're talking about rezoning to a different zone. So at that point, we would ask this petition, I'm asking you a question, Kara, I'm stating it as a statement. We would ask for this petition to be withdrawn without prejudice so that it could be refiled for the correct zone, assuming that's the path forward that we chose to take.
That would be fine.
I want to second everything we just heard about when we do a zone change. If we do a zone change, for instance, to
If you
BG,
think that the other zone change situation will be more resolved in October, my potential buyer, and then he could come up with a presentation for you for a building design, stuff like that. But again,
good,
this
so
is all just
we can look at
preliminary.
that going forward. But it's important to understand that we really, really, really do not view zone changes through the prism of a proposed project. Because that project could go south tomorrow. Mr. Patel could move back to Florida. He seems to have plenty of property down there. And all of a sudden, the new proposal, after we've done the zone change, is to build a Burger King and a McDonald's and a Wendy's all in a row right there.
Right.
And unfortunately, we zone to allow that. So we're very cautious about zone changes that open up to uses beyond the current proposal.
I was advised that if we
Because of
had a bill of sale or a commitment contract to present at the time, then it may be easier to get a zone change finished up. And like I said, this is like
Anything
the
is
chicken and the
possible.
egg deal.
I want to come back to planning for a moment, excuse me. Jeff, since you're one most likely to have the answers, the surrounding adjacent abutting properties to these two parcels, treating them as one, are zoned how?
The property to the north is Devonshire. It's a multifamily. I think it's an RM 20 or
RM20,
40.
yeah.
The property directly abutting, well, it comes down on the north and part of its western boundary. And then it's the CVS, which is zoned BG or a B zone.
The CVS is one of these
Right.
various things we're relooking
Right.
at
And
this
then to
point.
the right, to the east would be that, there's a third home next to the Ingleside Christmas House, and that's zoned R1A as well. The properties across the street are all zoned R1A.
And we have a Sears store right across the street, almost diagonally, right? Sears retail tire store, right there, the picture show.
But currently it's R1A to the south, unless the SC, because that being owned by Pyramid, in the event that the mall were to go to SC, that lot to the south, which is basically Tannery Brook, where it exits under Lower Westfield Road, which is undevelopable, that would be SC as well.
Or S, whatever.
Or SP or whatever the final, if it should move forward.
So just to be clear, in terms of like the formal definition of spot zoning, this combination of two properties that we're talking about does abut the CVS property.
Well,
And-
in fact, it really doesn't. There's a little
It is-
downshoot of the Devonshire, because Devonshire actually has,
Devonshire has a street right away out
there's
to
a,
there or
there's a
something?
little bit of a access, or, what's it, sorry?
They have like a dog leg out to the street right there?
There is, Devonshire does have zoning that, or a parcel that comes out onto Lower Westfield between the CVS and this property.
So this is not adjacent to any existing business zone?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, again, you're always looking at highest and best use of the property.
Thanks.
I have Counselor Bacon in queue.
Thank you. I'd like to follow up on the comments that Mr. Kelly made relative to the petition and the agenda that we have before us, because the way that it reads, and I've raised this with our attorney as well and with our chair, is it makes it appear that both of the lots seeking the change to business general or IG are currently zoned business limited. Now, per our discussion tonight, we know that is not the case. We know the residential property is in between the business limited and the Devonshire land and the CVS. And I really think, and I'm not an attorney, but I think in the plain reading of the English, if a regular logical person was to read it, they would think both properties are already business and you're just changing the type of business. So I think it's not necessarily intentionally misleading, but I do think it is misleading to the public who might have an interest in what's going on. So I really think to have the zone change properly before us, we have to have the request for 79 to be from business limited to whichever one the owner chooses, not that we choose, and for 83 to come in as a separate petition from residential to whatever business zone it is that you wish to choose, because this is just not clear, and we're not going to get a good decision out of a petition that is this murky. Having said that, not based on my own opinion, based on various conversations, public hearings, meetings, and people explaining things to me over the last few years, other than the new discussion around highest best use, if there is a zone change sought that is not similar to anything on either side of it, that has been understood to be spot zoning. So if the Y parking lot was a spot zoning issue, I don't see how we get around that discussion for this, but I'm not an attorney, and I will defer to the planning board on that, but if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, I don't know, I call it a duck, but there may be people who know more about it than I do, but I've been through a lot of meetings and a lot of zone change debates and discussions, and that is what the information that's come to me has led to my understanding. So if I am to be corrected, I will happily hear the information that shows me a new path, but I think you have to come in for both of them. But
So with that, I think suspension of the rules is in order, and we should ask legal to approach, because I think we need a more clear path forward in terms of what would be legally protected in terms of whether or not these parcels should be advertised as separate petition or approached as separate petitions, whether this R1A needs to be more clearly designated, and if we need to ask the petitioner to settle on a BG or IG as a zone change.
Madam Chair?
Under discussion, Councilor Alexander.
Thanks. I just want to make a quick observation. If I agree, this should be refiled as two separate petitions for two separate properties going from two separate zones over to one and only one zone, right? Which means change everything about what's in front of us. But we also have this whole other discussion about what to do with another zone that may be more appropriate when, all the dust settles. So is it maybe, rather than getting into a discussion of what's the best way forward to get to BG or IG, could we just table this until we get a little bit further down the shopping area zone discussion, so that if we know that's more appropriate, the petitioner can refile under that zone, which right now is not fully in place. So under that, I would say.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think that's a logical, it's a logical line of reasoning. However, it's not really our decision to craft the petition. And I think what we want to do here, my question is really pointing to, is how we can make sure that the petition before us is going to allow the public to speak and comment. I think that Councilor Bacon raises some, important points about people who may be interested in the zone change may not be reading this petition in a way that it may affect them. I think that the SC district, if we get to that point, which is still uncertain, could be a possibility, but that's really uncertain. And I think that Mr. Croteau and Mr. Radner really need to come before us and obtain some legal counsel on which zone is going to be best suited for your needs. But you need to speak into the microphone, but I guess...
Obviously, the second one, rather than the first one with the option for a dispensation, the second, was IG, would be the preferred one, which is a 4-story, without a question. No question. Just that when I went upstairs and asked around, they said, well, you could possibly go for the 2-story one with an option to override to give you an option to do a 4 as an option. I didn't make that up. That was just what upstairs said for ideas. And so obviously the 4-story would be the best choose from.
And I think it's important, I mean, a number of people on both bodies have raised the point that we don't create zone changes for particular projects. And so I think you're going to need some sort of argument for why the IG is the preferred zone change that you're seeking.
Okay.
And it has to be a more broad argument than the potential boutique hotel that could come your way, because the zone change is going to remain whether or not the hotel project goes through. I mean, it's still a potential.
Okay.
And that's why we don't zone change for projects. We want some larger vision presented to us for how that property is going to be useful to that neighborhood under the new zoning.
Okay.
So was there a motion then made and seconded for the suspension of the rules? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Kara, can you just help us out with, can we move forward from here with the tangledness that we're seeing? Or would you advise that we separate things out and create a separate petition for the parcel at 83?
Well, so the first question was whether the petition could ask for alternative zones. I did look into that, and I didn't find anything that says that they can't, as I had advised the chair in moving forward with this, as long as it was advertised, because it's really the key that the public is put on notice of what zones they're seeking. And so obviously the advertisement does list either BG or IG. You know, the petition is for both properties. They're both identified in the petition. If somebody came, you know, both the addresses are in the legal notice. If somebody came and looked at the petition, they would see that. They would see the parcel numbers. You know, certainly anything can always be challenged, but I wouldn't say the fact that the ad didn't say from R1A is something that, you know, would require them to re-advertise it. The zoning map in that area, if you look at it, is a bit of a patchwork anyways. So I don't think that just leaving that one part out is necessarily really that misleading or something that would invalidate it, because it is such a patchwork. And, you know, if you, I think the ad identifying the two parcels, identifying what the applicant is seeking is sufficient to move forward. You know, how you decide to ultimately deal with that is up to you. If you, I just want to remind you, it can't be tabled. It would have to be continued to a date certain if that's the route you're going to go.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Councilor Alexander, I believe, had a question for you as well, and as do Mr. Kelly.
Kara, just because you've got the legal notice in your hand, does it specify a from zone?
It says from BL to BG or
It does.
But it does say 79 and 83.
Okay. My question was just, is that in the legal notice or was it just on our agenda?
Right.
It is in the legal notice as well, and it is misleading. Thank you.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. Then my question, Kara, is when someone's petitioning to change to more than one zone, and who chooses the city council chooses a zone at the end of the day? Because in this case, if you look at the two zones being requested, you could argue that one is more restrictive than the other when you're looking at potential uses. So if you're saying that they can petition for more than one zone, someone makes that decision, right? So the city council could say, okay, then we'll let you, change it to this zone, and maybe down the road someone's saying, well, we really wanted the other one because it's more restrictive. I guess, who makes that decision? That's why I guess I raised the question. From one zone to one zone is very easy to understand. But when they're saying change it to either this one or that one or 3 or 4, or here's the book, pick something for me, then that decision would have to rest with the city council. And what kind of, have we done that before?
Well, I do. The city council would be the ultimate decision maker, just as they are in any other zone change. I admit it is obviously unusual. It's not something we necessarily have seen. I did, post the question to a planning listserv, and there, I didn't get any responses saying that you couldn't do it. The response was it had to be properly advertised. And so like I said, I'm not aware of anything that would preclude them from this petition. And ultimately, the way I would see it is that the planning board is going to make a recommendation to the city council. Presumably that recommendation would be for one of these two zones, or perhaps it would be for no zone change. And then, just as in other cases, the city council has the final say on that.
Okay. All right, because one is more restrictive than the other, so it almost seems like that could maybe be open for, further issues down the road by putting that decision in the hands of the council at the end of the day. instead of the petitioner coming forward and saying, here's what I want, and the council says yes or no, and here are the reasons why. Yeah. It's very unusual, I guess.
The only other thing I would say is, as I think was alluded to before, the council and even the planning board have the power to initiate zone changes themselves. And so, ultimately it is the council that always has the final say on it, so.
All right.
I do want to allow the public to comment at this point because they've been waiting. I would just also offer that it may not be a situation that is dissimilar from what we saw with the Whiting Farms parcel. There were 2 separate petitions with competing zone change requests. So I think in some ways you could interpret this BG or IG as the same effect as what the petition for the RM20 and the petition for the BH zones had on that one parcel. It's one way of looking at it. So I think in terms of public comment, anyone who'd like to who wishes to speak in favor or against the zone change to BG or IG may come forward and speak, giving your name and address for the record.
I'm Harold Brunault, 186 Pleasant Street, Holyoke, Mass. I am the owner of the property directly across from where this proposed hotel would go. I do find it interesting that the alternative, because it puts you in a little bit of a position of saying, do you want a 2-story or a 4-story? And I think they ought to make their mind up exactly what they do want so we know what is proposed to go in there. I don't see a problem with taking 2 pieces of property owned by the same person and making a zone change, because I've seen zone changes where they take several properties, 8 or 10 properties, and make a whole zone. I think if you look at the original zoning of the mall, there was probably 5 or 6 different. I think one parcel might have been industrial, one parcel might have been residential, and there's various owners. Because I remember Providence Ministries owned some, and the other one was owned by Jericho, and so on, that put it together to put the whole zoning for the mall. So I don't think zones of 2 parcels, especially owned by the same person, even if they were owned by other people. But I'm more concerned, and I'm always concerned in a zone change, that I'd like to see a contract of some sort by the people that are selling it with the potential buyer online saying that this is what is going to be built. Because your only protection is, and it does sound nice to have a 4-story hotel, the way they're talked about, more of a convention hotel and all that. But we all know when you zone a zone and the deal falls through, I originally petitioned for a zone change with my brother and my sister for the property across the street. We had a fellow who was interested in, again, building a hotel there. Apparently that's hotel area, according to the developers, because the 2 or 3 people that approached us were all hotel builders. But it fell through when one of the owners wanted an excessive amount of money, and what we did is we withdrew the petition for the zone change at that time, because we said it's fairness to people and neighbors to know exactly what is going into the property or what is proposed to go into the property prior to the zone change. You can't guarantee it, obviously. A person could start and go bankrupt. You know, you could have happenings that the original builders, but I agree with the councilman that says we don't want Burger King, McDonald's, and Subway all packed in there, because all of a sudden the hotel disappears and, you know, the sellers just sell it to someone for a different, completely different use. So I think the petition ought to be clear as to what the zone is. I've never really heard of alternative. It doesn't necessarily sound, but if 6 of you think that, or 5 of you, or some think that it should be one zone and the other 6 think it's another zone, you never reach a consensus of a vote. So, it ought to be clear. I think there's amateurs here doing this, but I would really like the city council to really see the plans and really see that there is going to be what they're proposing to go in there.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor or against the proposal of a zone change to BG or IG?
Hello, Mary Hurley, 72 Lower Westfield Road. I live kitty corner, across the street. I just wanted to clarify one thing to Mr. Alexander. Between the proposed property of 83 Lower Westfield Road and Tannery Brook, there is a residence there. I'm not sure of the zoning. That's before CVS. So between CVS and Tannery Brook, there is a house there. So I'm not sure, again, if it's residence on a commercial property, whatever. So my concern is, other than where I live, kitty corner, not to get into too much, we talked about spot zoning, we talked about looking at this across the street. So I took a different approach. I thought, okay, what if I was to stay at a boutique hotel? I thought, okay, what would I look for in a neighborhood? What would I look for in its amenities, etc.? So a lot of what the research that I looked into was a lot of people, the service, the being catered to. So is there going to be a restaurant inside? Some places have them, some have minimal dining. So a lot of them, what I read, again, this is all on the internet, but neighborhoods. These people like to go out, nightlife neighborhoods. There's no sidewalk between the proposed hotel and, say, CVS. There are no sidewalks. So would a sidewalk obviously be necessary? Panhandling by the mall, which I know a lot of you are working on or have mentioned. I don't know what the guarantees are, but myself, if I came to a city, saw panhandlers, the ridiculous loud car noise at radios at the stop signs, the best, but the absolute shocking thing I saw, not shocking, it's good in a way, the Western Mass facility across the street. Part of their community service is to pick up trash in the street, which is great, that's fine. If I was staying at that hotel and I came out to do whatever, saw a correctional guard walking with a resident, I can tell you I'd be a little put off. And it's, again, no offense to anybody, but that's just my thing. So my thing is, if you're going to zone change this to whatever we decide, or you decide, or actually what they decide, what are the guarantees down the road? There are no guarantees, anything, obviously, but my concern is we are stuck with the zone of industrial or shopping center, and it's, I just urge you to please reconsider or consider clarification. The other thing I'd like to mention is, due to the fact of the homes on the street, the one for sale next to Mr. Croto's property on 79 Lower Westfield Road, that's for sale. There's Devonshire Place are not the owners of the property, so they are not given notice, from what I understand, because they are renters. We have renters all kind of down around the corner on the street. So what may look to you like a disinterest in this neighborhood, in this proposed hotel, is really not. It's a lot of the property owners do not live there. They rent. So nothing against the property owners, Mr. Bruno, but and as far as Mr. Croto, we miss you so much. We really miss you. He's been a wonderful neighbor, upkeeps the thing. I'm really jealous of the place in Chicopee you have, but he's been wonderful. So this is nothing personal. This is strictly, the what ifs. So I thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak this evening? I'd really like to allow the public to speak, and then we could resume questions from counselors.
My name is Michael Clark. I live at 68 Lower Westfield Road, right next to the Hurleys, and kind of diagonally from the Ingleside shop. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. My major concern, well, a couple of concerns is if this proposed hotel ever went in there, and I know you zone for use, not projects. My concern is there's going to be so much more traffic. The traffic has increased, how many more, Ed? Yeah, there's at least about 100 more cars a day since they put the low security prison up there. So it's going to be increased traffic. The road can't handle it. We already get more traffic than we can handle already going up to the mall. And if you stick a hotel in there, my God. Okay, so that's a big thing. The second thing is, if, say, that hotel doesn't come through, we're going to be stuck because something else will go there once it's rezoned. And that affects everybody there. It's going to affect our property values. I just retired. I'm on a fixed income. It's not easy for me to relocate. In fact, my family has lived on that street since 1954, when it was all farmland. Before, there was no 91, no mall, no nothing. Just a few houses on the street. So we've seen a lot of changes, and it's got to stop at some point. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. And then Mr. Croteau?
Regarding the properties on Lower Westfield Road, we have already been approached by people for the 79 parcel. And we have already told them, no, you're not putting a fast food restaurant here. We don't want it, okay? We are very concerned for the neighborhood and what's going on there. We're not just passing through. I live in Holyoke. And we don't want that to happen. That is not my intent, and I think my integrity stands a little better than that. So, my feelings are, if you have a proposal in hand, a contract from a viable business person with a wonderful reputation that's going to put something in there that's going to increase the value of the area, bring revenue to the city, why would you tell them, go away, we don't want you? And that's essentially what other people are saying. I'm not going to retaliate and say, well, I'm going to put a store in there because I own that property and I can put a different type of business in there that's going to be a detriment to the neighborhood. I don't want to, and I won't do that, no matter what the council votes. I'll continue to maintain and pay for those properties until something good comes along that's going to happen there. Thank you.
Thank you. So comments from the council and planning board. I saw there were a few hands that went up. Councilor Bacon.
To whoever knows, what is currently allowed under business limited for the one parcel? And the other parcel, in answer to your question, is residential. Can anybody tell me what's... What I'm wondering is what is allowed under the business limited zone. I have these other, so I don't have that one. BL is on the one she just gave me. It's not on the one that I had.
Okay.
Unless it's on the back. No. It's a different sheet.
It's a different, okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Marcos.
Do you want to read it into the microphone? So just because everybody's looking at the documentation and not all of us have the paperwork in front of us, I'm going to ask Ms. Panish to just read off a couple of the uses.
This is a long list.
It is a long list.
I thought it might be shorter. I didn't know.
Is there any specific use that you're...
Just black meat, you can't do it? Is there a key to this thing? Does black mean you can't do it?
Oh, wait, here you go.
Blue is what you can
Blue
do.
is allowed,
Oh, thank
black is not allowed.
Can you
red
say
is
that into the
allowed
microphone,
by
Councilor
special-
Bacon?
Blue is allowed by right, and black is not allowed.
No, it's not allowed to be.
It says that on the last page, bottom.
Right, but I was looking for the drive-through restaurant. And right, but a fast food restaurant isn't either. Yes. Unless a special permit is granted.
So,
All right.
just for clarity,
Yes, for clarity, commercial uses in a business limited zone. Actually, I'm going to need other glasses for the fine print here. Non-exempt farm stand is not allowed. Just the S's? There are no S's.
yes.
Oh. Non-exempt educational use is allowed. Veterinary clinic is allowed. Funeral home. By special permit, bed and breakfast. Yeah, restaurant is allowed in, well, actually, restaurant, yeah. Fast food restaurant, city council permit. Business or professional office, bank, retail banking, financial agency. Business or professional office. Bank, financial office, or institution not exceeding 2,000 square feet. Medical office building. Medical clinic. Commercial drive-through by city council permit. Membership club.
Madam Chair?
So I'm just going to make a quick summary statement. So it seems that many of the uses that are allowed in business limited by right are allowed in the business general. And then there's a few that are not allowed in the business limited except by city council permit. So they're not excluded, but they need a special permit from the city council. Councilor Bartley, did you want to speak?
I want to make a motion.
Okay.
Okay, I want to make a motion to give this order leave to withdraw. Give this petition leave to withdraw. We can close the hearing, sure. So and any way you want to do, whatever I'll just make a point of order. Do we need to close the hearing first?
You would need to close the public hearing and then make a motion to, well, we'd actually have to receive a recommendation from the planning board if they close their hearing as well. So really, the ball is in motion. And if we close the public hearing, we're excluding ourselves from other information that may be received by the planning board if they do not close their hearing tonight.
I'll take the risk.
Madam Chairman, just a point of order.
Under discussion, Councilor McGivern.
We cannot give any petition leave to withdraw, unless the petitioner requests it.
It's true. That's right.
Okay.
But we can close the public hearing nonetheless and begin to shut down this process and ask the petitioner to begin anew, which I think is really, unnecessary considering they would have to re-advertise, pay for a new petition being advertised, and so on. Under discussion, Councilor Shatnoff.
I second the motion only because I don't think it's our job to pick a zone for somebody. I think it's our job to vote on a zone change in front of us, but for us to be like, yeah, this one sounds better, I think is opening a can of worms for down the road.
So I'd like to suspend the necessary rules and ask a legal one final question this evening. There a motion?
But we're already suspended.
We're under suspension? So, Kara, Is there a process by which the petitioner can amend their petition if they submitted something in writing that said we'd like to? Because if they can submit something that says we'd like to withdraw this petition, I'm imagining there could be a way that they could submit something in writing that amends the petition so that it more accurately identifies which zone change they want us to consider.
Oh, if it was one of the two that was already proposed?
Yes.
Sure, you would have to leave the public hearing open to receive that. I mean, I've already said I think it was fine to move forward with the alternative zone, so if they wanted to choose one and you were to just move forward on that, that would be fine.
Yep. Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. And would it also be proper to ask the petitioner to amend their petition to reflect the residential zone of the other property? Or would it be possible for us to request that in the amended petition?
I mean, that's fine. I guess the issue really is, are you asking them to re-advertise that and pay for those costs?
No, but I am asking that it be made clear what zone is what and changing from what to what. Right now, all the language that we have makes it look like there are two lots zoned the same that wish to be zoned one other's.
Sure. That's fine. Again, the public hearing would have to be left open to receive
Right.
that.
I just want to be clear with the public about what we're doing, and anybody else that would be having this happen in their neighborhood would want the same thing. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that sounds like the best way to move forward. If we continue the public hearing to a date certain into the future, and in the meantime, the petitioner can submit in writing a request to refine and amend the petition that's before us. Does that sound like something you'd be willing to do?
That's fine, but then the question came up when I did the office visits. If we asked for the two-story zone with a caveat, with a four-story permit, does that make any sense to anybody? That's too much work to get a zoning that allowed, so it restricts it more. That's what I'm saying, helping this, or this new one said something about a four-story or bigger. With the new zoning would preclude that problem. When we talked about it upstairs for 2 or 3 visits, they said maybe you could ask for the zone change to the two-story with a caveat from the city council to give you a permit to exchange or upgrade that to a four-story as an option.
So I'm just really unclear. Is there a special permit? No.
There is no special permit that allows for that. I believe we even discussed that.
Okay, so you can't do that. So we'll scratch that off of and we go with the IG, or wait for the opinion to come out to help you out. Let's wait in the paperwork for your paperwork. We'll wait whatever until the city council makes some new design on the additional new zoning.
So I think
Use that for excuse.
what we're likely to do then is to continue this to a date much further into the future to give you some time to make that decision. However, it's going to be your decision, and we're going to need to receive in writing the amendments that you'd like us to consider.
Okay.
And those amendments would be it would be necessary to submit them to the city clerk's office in advance of this next meeting where we're continuing the public hearing too.
We can do that early part of next week. Sure.
Councilor Bartley and Bacon.
Okay, so I guess I just want to make a motion then to continue the public hearing to some date past October 13th, because that's when we do the shopping district zone.
Right.
So.
And the shopping district zone may be closed on the 13th, and then we have to go through this process where the planning board makes a recommendation to us. So it really needs to be beyond November at this point.
Beyond November.
Yep. Yes, you'd like to speak. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Joe Hohal. I just came down because I've got some property up there. I want to see what was going on here, the zone change. I know where it is. It's right next to my property, the CVS and the house. Well, I remember when Mr. Clark put his house up on the corner. We were there since like 46, and I'm going to speak just quickly about the history of that area. Number one, when we moved up there was nothing, obviously, and then 91 went in, Whiting Farm Road went in, and my father's corner where CVS is came available. He died. I developed it, And adjoining that property was my uncle's property, who my father gave to where that green ranch house is for $1. When he passed away, I got the property. Let me tell you about that property. When we put the CVS in, my uncle was offered $60,000 a year, increasing 10% every 5 years, guaranteed for 20 years. And he sat there and said, geez, I don't want to leave here. I'm not going to leave here. Well, what happened is what's up there. His house is still there. CVS is still there. And to his dying day, he regretted not leaving that house. I'm going to tell you, if these gentlemen put in something on across the brook and it's a viable business, that whole area is going to increase tenfold in price. Sure, you're going to have more cars. You're going to have more people saying, hey, look at the people coming up here. Taxes are going to increase. That whole place is going anyhow. All of those houses are going. That's going to end up business. The idea is it's going to end up sooner or later. I saw what happened. I was there. I saw my uncle sitting there with his feet in the ground. I'm not moving. I'm not moving. And they're offering him the sky. And I'm sure there are some pretty good offers for some of those houses down the street. Now, I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm just telling you what I saw. Just go by there any day. You'll see CVS, and you'll see a house right in the middle of all the business. Say, how the hell did that get there? Well, that's how it got there. And to his dying day, I went down the day he died. He said, Joe, I should have moved out of there. I said, Stanley, I told you so. You should have been up to Holyoke Soldiers Home with your war wounds. You'd have been all set, and that's where that came from. But I just had a little insight. I have no horse in the fight here, but I'm telling you the history of why that house is there and what's going to happen down the rest of the street. Those prices are going to go up. You hold off a little longer, you're going to do okay with money down there. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, so there's been a motion then to continue the public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Bacon, you did have your hand up.
To Mr. Croto, in fairness to him, on the shopping center zone, all the discussions we've had relative to that have, relative to the shopping center zone that some people are alluding to may be an option. Up until and through tonight, the discussion has been around large retail plazas, not smaller lots of land like you are proposing. So I just, as you're considering what potential amendments you might be making, from everything I've heard, your lots wouldn't fit in that zone. Just FYI.
So the motion is to continue. Do you have a date, Madam Chair?
What I'm looking at right now is December 8th, which is the second
So
Tuesday of
I'll
December.
make a motion to continue public hearing to December 8th
Does that make sense for you guys?
at 6:30.
Does the date make sense for the planning board?
Yeah, motion to continue this public hearing to December 8th at 6:30.
Do I hear all in favor?
Aye.
And our motion is still on the floor. I just wanted to confirm that that would be a good date
Oh, I'm
for it.
sorry.
That's okay. Sharon, the date is good, right? So the motion has been made and seconded to continue this public hearing until December 8th at 6:30 p.m. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Thanks, everyone, for coming down. You guys have some time before you need to submit those written amendments.
Thank you, everybody, for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah. It's no problem. It's just that David was looking at me like, did we vote? And no, we didn't vote. So we have one more joint public hearing before us this evening, which is item number 5 on our agenda. Is there a motion to take this up for discussion?
Motion to take up item number 5?
Motion has been made and seconded to take up item number 5, which is to review the BG, BH, SC, and IG zoning ordinances to see if they could be consolidated and/or reformulated to make more intuitive and business-friendly commercial districts. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, counting me, yes.
Did you say it?
I don't even have a vote. Go ahead. You could go ahead. Do they have something proposed for us tonight?
I don't think so. I think this is going to be an open and continued.
Yeah. Let's do that then. The photos they want back? It's really the meetings photos at this point.
Well, does he want? Yeah. Does he? Okay, applicant wants them. I'll take that. I mean, those are horrible photos.
Yeah, they're utterly irrelevant.
They were submitted though. Yeah. I don't think they're material.
Okay, while we're waiting, motion to open the public hearing of the planning board to deal with table 5.2 of the table of dimensional regulations and to reopen the public hearing for review of the BG, BH, SC, and IG zones to consolidate or reformulate the definitions.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
So the planning board opened up both 5 and 6, so if I may consider a motion.
So moved.
The motion's been made and seconded to take up 6 as well. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. So 5 and 6 are on the table before us for discussion. Planning board, have you guys made, planning board and department, I remember we had a working group meeting on item number 5. I don't think we've made any progress since then. It's looking at the 4 districts side by side.
Yeah, we have not taken this up yet. We focused our efforts on doing the SC. The others are really secondary to making a unifying zone around Ingleside.
So it's somewhat contingent on where the shopping center plaza district lands in terms of legal language at this point.
Well, also, if I may, it's also not evident or obvious that BG, BH, and IG would go together. I mean, SC in this proposal, or whatever it ends up being called, would replace a significant amount of BH and BG. But IG and the other business zones are radically different. So it's not evident at this point in time that those could be combined per se. BG and BH, there are some characteristics that probably could be, but we have not taken that up at this point.
Yeah. So I think whether it's consolidated or reformulated and fine-tuned is still going to be contingent in some ways on the shopping center district and wherever the draft of the shopping center district lands. So I think we're fine to table it for now.
And I just want to be clear. I'm not saying our work is contingent on one or the other. The council is the decider. We've prioritized the work of the SC because we see a high need for it from the community stakeholders. There hasn't been an outcry or a need that we've seen from the market, from property owners on consolidating BH and BG. There may be certainly merit to that, whether SC passes or not. So that's why it hasn't been as prioritized.
That's fine. Any other discussion from the planning board side on item number 5? These 2 items are taken up as a package. So item number 6 is then to make dimensional changes to the regulations for the BH zone, table 5.2 of the zoning ordinance. And I think that really is part and parcel to the item before that, the order before that. So making changes to the BH district would be reflected in table 5.2. Is that correct, Marcos?
Yes, so to the extent that a potential zone change for the mall, which is the big outlier in the BH, that would free up the city to think what the BH would look like. Yes, that would be the precursor.
Okay. So then, if there's any other comments on this from the planning board? It seems that we can, as a package, continue both these to a date into the future.
Motion to continue both of these to, I don't know, where do you want to go? December?
I think the December 8th
6th?
meeting
December
seems
8th?
like a good time.
December 8th at 6:30?
Motion has been made and seconded to continue this meeting to December 8th at 6:30 PM. All in favor? So moved.
Motion to continue the planning board hearing on this matter to December 8th at 6:30.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that concludes our joint public hearing for this evening. We do have one item on our city council agenda that needs to be dealt with. And then I think that Karis had sent out an email asking us to take up one other thing, but I don't see it reflected on the agenda. It's on. That was for the special meeting. Okay, great. So
Do we
item
ha-
number one?
Do we have prior meeting minutes?
No, no.
So motion to leave number one tabled? So no motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion's been made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everyone, for your time tonight.